Welcome back to All This Math, and we're doing some Praxis prep recap. We're recapping some Praxis prep problems I went over this past weekend. So let's take a look. So this was number 15 from a packet of problems we were reviewing in our session. And number 15 says, how do you solve V equals LWH for H? So first, let's think about this. How do you solve? What does solve mean? Solve means you isolate a variable on one side of an equation, and on the other side of the equation, you either have a number or some type of expression that is equivalent to that variable. All right, so we're trying to solve for H, right? So the variable H, right? We want to have H isolated on one side of this equation, meaning either the right side of the equal sign or the left side of the equal sign. Now it's already on the right side of the equal sign, so it would be the easiest thing to do. We'll be able to isolate it on the right side of the equal sign. Even though if you wanted to, you could move it to the other side of the equal sign if you wanted to, right? So we want to solve, and think about this equation itself, V equals LWH, that's the formula for volume, right? Volume of a rectangular prism, right? Like a box. Like if you order something from Amazon, it comes in the mail, that box has a volume. And, the people at Amazon, the company, they need to know the volume so they'll know how much stuff can fit inside the box when they ship it out to you. You know what I mean? So that's why this formula is important in mathematics. All right. So we got V equals LWH, length times width times height for H. When we say for H, that means we're solving for H. So we're trying to get H by itself. All right. Now the question is, how do we do that? And we got multiple choices right here. So once we actually solve it using some algebra, and by the way, this is called a literal equation. A literal equation. A literal equation is an equation where you have all letters, or rather all variables. You have no numbers, just variables. So we got V, L, W, and H. That's called a literal equation. All right. So how do I get H by itself? That's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to copy this over. Right? I'm going to write it like right here. So V is equal to L times W times H. So there's a few ways to do this. Now I want to get H by itself. So that means I want to get rid of some things, because in order for H to be alone on the right side of the equal sign, these two things have to be gotten rid of, this L and this W. So now the question is, how mathematically do I do it? I do it by doing the opposite operations that it's involved in. Now, this is L times W, right? That's multiplication. So L is involved in multiplication. So in order to get rid of L, that means I have to do the opposite of multiplication. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So that means I need to divide by L on the left side and create a fraction, make it look like that. And I also need to divide by L on the left side. I divide by L on the right side and I divide by L on the left side, because when we solve equations, we have to be balanced. Whatever you do on one side, you need to also do on the other side. So now I got V over L is equal to, and these L's cancel out and turn into ones, because anytime you divide something by itself, the quotient or the answer is always 1. So these L's turn into ones, right? So now I got V over L is equal to WH, right? Now, I want to get rid of W. So I want to get rid of W, but so W is being multiplied by H, right? Because that's WH, which really means W times H. So the opposite of multiplication, again, is still division, right? So what I need to do is I need to divide by W. But it's going to get a little weird, because if I try to divide by W over here, I guess I could divide this by W, right? So let's do that. Let's just divide by W. So if we divide by W on the right side, that looks like this. But if I want to divide by W over here, then I would need to create a complex fraction, but I don't want to do all of that, because that's going to make it look more complicated. What you need to understand is that when you're dividing a fraction by, or dividing a fraction by another term, or a fraction by a variable, right? That's equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal. Right? Think about when we divide fractions. Think about keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. When you flip that second fraction, that's equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal. So, just think about 8 divided by 4. 8 divided by 4 I'll write that right here. 8 divided by 4 is the same thing as saying 8 times 1/4. And since 8 divided by 4 is the same thing as saying 8 times 1/4, I can say V over L divided by W is the same thing. It's the same thing as saying V over L times 1 over W. See? Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. Keep the V over L, change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and flip the W to its reciprocal. So instead of it being W, now it's 1 over W. All right? So when we get over here, on the right side, it was kind of easy. I just divided by W. I just put it in the denominator. But over here, that's like a little different. So the equivalent will also be multiplying by 1 over W. Right? So these W's cancel out and turn into 1s. That equals H. So now I got 1. Now this is a multiplication problem over here. I got 1 times V, which is V. And I got W times L, which is WL. All right? And now H is isolated by itself. So that means we solved. Because solving means to isolate that variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. And then it's equal to something on the other side of the equal sign. Right? That's what solving means. And that's what solving is. That's what happens. That's what you're doing when you solve. All right? So now we go to our multiple choice options and we look for the one that looks like this. So H is equal to, so V in my numerator and LW, I see V over LW. That's the same thing as this because multiplication is commutative. It doesn't matter the order of the terms when we're dealing with multiplication, right? Just like 3 times 2 equals 6. If we switch the 3 and the 2 in position, 2 times 3 also equals 6. So that's why V over WL is the same thing as V over LW because of the commutative property of multiplication. That's what we call it. That's why we're able to do that. Okay? So, correct answer. No, that's not. I circled the wrong one. Wrong. Oh, loud and wrong. The correct answer is B. V over LW. All right? But in case this part was confusing, because I know I was trying to say a whole lot in a limited amount of time, let's imagine that we did it a different way. So let's say we divide by L on both sides and we got V over L is equal to WH, right? Or no, this is not what I want to do. What I meant to do was this. Let's say we start from the beginning. We start from the beginning and approach it a different way. So let's say we got V equals LWH. Now, because we know when we look at the problem, we know we're trying to solve for H, which means we're trying to get H by itself. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get H by itself. So that means ultimately I got to get rid of L and W, length and width. I don't have to get rid of them individually. I can get rid of them at the same time. Instead of dividing by L and dividing by L, and then dividing by W and dividing by W, I can get rid of those at the same exact time. I can just divide by LW. I can treat or think of LW as one term and divide by LW on the right side like that, and then divide by LW on the left side like that. All right, so these cancel out and become 1s, and then I'm left with V over LW is equal to H. So either way, we get this. Either way, whether we do it one at a time, one variable at a time, or we do them both variables at the same time. Either way. All right. So now these are literal equations. So what I recommend for you to do is go online and find some examples of solving literal equations and just do some practice. Do some practice, right? This is a good skill to practice, right? In terms of getting prepared for the test. So go ahead, get some practice, and I'll catch up to you in the next video. Peace.